I wonder if people struggle knowing how to zero a rifle scope in. Maybe I could tell them. Do a video. In fact, I will do a video.
Today, I'm going to show you how to mount and zero in a rifle scope. This concept works on pretty much any rifle, whether that's an air rifle, a rimfire rifle, a centerfire rifle. All aspects are generally the same. Obviously, distances will differ depending on the type of rifle you're using. So the first thing you need to consider when mounting your rifle scope is the scope itself. You need to know how thick in diameter the tube is. Generally, this will be 1 inch or 30 mil. You can go up to 34 mil, and some are going a little bigger than that now. But generally, if you're using an air gun, you're only going to use a 1 inch or a 30mm tube scope. You can determine this by literally measuring the diameter, or it will tell you on the box of the scope. This is important because rings determine what scope you will be using in diameter. The next thing to consider when mounting your rifle scope is how big the objective lens is. So with a rifle scope, you have your ocular and you have your objective size. So this one is a 3:12 by 50. Now those numbers mean the magnification ranges from 3 times magnification and will run all the way up to 12 times magnification. The by 50 means by 50mm. That's the glass inside the casing, not the actual outer diameter of the rifle scope. Now you can have rifle scopes in lots and lots of different variants. You can have 2.5 to 10, 3 to 12, 4 to 16, 8.5 to 32, 6 to 24. The options are pretty much endless. What you tend to find with a rifle scope is that the beginning magnification is a multiplication of itself on the maximum magnification. With this particular rifle scope, we have a side parallax adjustment. Now, depending on how much you paid for a rifle scope, tends to depend whether it has a parallax adjustment at all. If it does, sometimes that's at the front, and that's called an adjustable objective. When you pay a little bit more, they then tend to be on the side, and that also kind of relates to the tube diameter as well. If you've bought a scope for sort of 50-60 pounds, it's definitely going to be a 1 inch tube, going up to sort of probably 130. Once you sort of hit the 130 plus mark, you do start to see rifle scopes with a 30mm diameter. Anyway, enough about that. So those are the two of the things to consider: your tube diameter and your objective size. The reason the objective size is important is because you want to make sure you have enough clearance between the barrel and the rifle scope when mounting your rifle scope. So the height of the mounts is important. So some rifles don't have a drop between the receiver and the barrel, so normally you have to use mounts that are higher than usual. On this one, you can see it's a stepped receiver, so I would be able to get away with medium mounts with this particular objective size. However, I've got a set of highs open, so that's what I'm going to use. Ideally, for accuracy purposes, you want the bottom of the scope objective to be as close to the barrel without touching it as possible. But with an air gun that we're going to be using at sort of 30 to 50 yards, it's not of the most great importance to be super duper close to the barrel. So I'll show you how to put the mounts on now. In order to make sure you get the correct rings for your rifle, you need to know what rail it has on the top. Now, 99% of air rifles come with an 11mm dovetail as standard. Some now come with a Weaver rail as standard, and some come as a dual rail, as this one does. This is a Kral NPO2, and with the majority of Krals, they all come with a dual rail. So this will take Weaver and it will take 11mm dovetail mounts. Now, if you have a BSA, their dovetail rail is 13mm, so you just need to be careful that you get the correct mounts. I've put 11mm dovetail mounts on BSAs before, and it doesn't really tend to make much difference, but you will find that the mount at the bottom of the rail is ever so slightly stepped out, so aesthetically it doesn't look great, but generally in practice it works fine. Anyway, this is a dual rail and I'm going to be using 11mm mounts for this job. Now, most sets of mounts come with Allen keys in the box. I tend to find they're pretty much useless, so get yourself a screwdriver with a bit end if you have one, or use a T-bar, much more easier on your thumb. So what we're going to do is we're going to put both mounts on the rifle to begin with, and then we're going to measure between to make sure they're in the right place before we tighten them up. Now, one thing to note is with the feet of the mounts, where the screws tighten up, is you want them to be on the same side for each mount. So I'll do it this way so you can see. So we're going to tighten that one up onto there. But we'll keep it fairly loose for now. And same with this one. Like so. The reason you want to tighten them at the same side together is they're under an awful lot of tolerance when you tighten them up. So if you tighten one this side and then one that side, you might struggle to zero it in. Sit the scope into the mounts just like that. Now, if you've got a Kral like this, or if you have a Daystate, for example, anything where the magazine sits above the action, you just want to, at this stage, open the bolt, put the magazine in and make sure it's not touching the bottom of the tube. I've done it loads of times where I've got to the point where I'm about to zero it in, put the magazine in and it won't go in and I've got to undo it all. So just double check, and if you can, avoid the body of the scope, as in the center, over where the magazine goes, because that's the bulkiest part. So if you can have that towards the back, the better. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to pop these on loosely, and then we're going to pick the rifle up, have a look through it, straighten it out to where it looks right, and then we'll tighten it all down if the positioning is correct, which looks like it probably is, to be fair. So they're loose. Now, when you're checking between the distance of your eye and the scope, it's normally about 3 inches. I will do a video to show you how that looks exact at a later date. But what you want to do is have your head, so there is no black around the outside, so that's too far back for me right now. So that needs to go slightly forward. That's about perfect. And then just turn it until it looks straight, which is about there. When you're happy with it, tighten everything down. Now, there's going to be people watching this saying I should be using a Torx driver so I don't crush the tube and make sure it's tight enough. Well, I've been doing this since I was 7 years old, and never have I had a crushed tube or a scope fall off. So what I suggest is go until it's tight and then nip. Tight and nip. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are going to disagree, that perhaps of an engineering mindset. I'm not. This is how I've always done it, never had a problem, but everyone, I'm sure, will say I'm doing it wrong. So again, tight, nip, that's all you need, that last little nip. Using a calibrated wrist, how's that? And that's it, rifle scope on the rifle. So I will now show you how to zero it in. So have your rifle ready. I suggest taking the scope caps off before you start. Likelihood is you are not going to be on target right away. When you start to zero in, I suggest that you start closer rather than too far away. The reason for that is if you're off the target, as in you are not on the paper at all, it'll be far easier to work out if you are closer. If you're too far away, you will end up frustrating yourself, chasing yourself around, and it's just a lot more difficult to do it that way. One common mistake people make is they'll take the first shot, it won't be where they're aiming, so they'll start to move the scope. Now, if you do that, you can end up chasing yourself around again. And the reason for this is you've got to eliminate all the other things that it could be, whether that be the pellet clipping your silencer, whether you've flinched when you've pulled the trigger. So what I suggest is wherever the first pellet goes, continue aiming in the point that you started and put 3 shots in. Once you put 3 shots in, if they are grouping in the same place, then you can start to adjust. I'll demonstrate what I mean now. So that explanation I just gave does ring true because the first shot I took strayed down here. The next 3 that I took went pretty much in the same sort of area, within a fingernail. So we're currently down to the right, which means we need to take the scope up and to the left. Now, on every single rifle scope, when you take the turret cap off, some are exposed and there might be a lift up locking turret, but they will have an arrow. I'll try and make that clear. And normally on the elevation turret, the arrow says up in the direction of the arrow, and on the windage side, it'll say L with a arrow pointing where L is. Now, what a lot of you'll be thinking, if you are new to this, and apologies for those who I am teaching to suck eggs, but your mind thinks that you now need to move the scope down to where the pellets have fired. That's incorrect. You want to basically work the opposite way. Now, there's measurements on scopes. Don't get confused, is my advice to you. So you'll probably see a multiplication on the top that says something like a 1/4 MOA, an 1/8 MOA, a 0.1 milrad, something like that. Now, these all do have a genuine meaning. So a 1/4 MOA, which this particular scope is, means a 1/4 minute of angle, which means each click at 100 yards equals a 1/4 of an inch. Now, you can sit there all day and work out the multiplication of what you need to adjust at 10 meters, 20 meters, what have you. What I suggest is not doing that and just playing it by ear. So we need to come up about 4 inches and we need to come across by about 2 inches. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to give the top turret in the direction of up 1 full rotation. Okay, and now I'm going to give the windage turret half a turn of elevation, half a turn to the left. About there. So I'll put another 3 shots down and you can see where it's moved. The other thing I'll just mention is make sure you're using a decent brand of pellet. If you're using rubbish pellets, expect rubbish results. So in this instance, I am using RWS R10 Match, which are a very good pellet and they aren't ultra expensive either.
There we are. I hope that was clear for you all. If it wasn't, just drop me a comment and I will try and explain it better. This system will work whether you're using an air gun, a rimfire or a centerfire. However, if you were using a centerfire and you were shooting at a considerable further distance, I would go into more depth on the scope adjustments with the click values. So I hope that was helpful to you, and I'll see you all again soon.